But there has never, ever been a better time to launch a transformative event, an event that costs more because it's worth more, an event that people talk about 3 or 5 years later. That will feel risky, but it's actually the safest thing you can do.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Keynote Curators Podcast. I'm Seth Deckman, your Keynote Curator. I want to welcome our esteemed guest, Seth Godin. Seth, welcome to the podcast.
It's great to see you. Thanks for having me, Seth.
It's great to have you. I think I just want to make history right off the bat. We're going to rebrand and remarket everything. This is two bald guys with a bunch of mics talking. It's a new venture.
It's a new meme. Here we go.
Here we go. We're making history. Seth, I read your book, the most recent one. I know you have nearly 20, and at this point where you are, you're like a little bit like whatever, 20 books, but it is an extraordinary accomplishment. This book is so unique. It's called This Is Strategy, but I want to connect it to all things having to do with me because, heck, it is my podcast.
Sure.
I love tennis. I play, weather permitting, 5-6 days a week, body permitting. You know, McEnroe said that Borg played this in the following way: cross court, cross court, cross court, wait for it, cross court. Now, it drove McEnroe crazy because he was more of an artist. They considered him an artist. He had a lot of variations in his shot selection and his execution. Dial us in here. How do you see that? Is that tactic or strategy from Borg?
The strategy was to drive McEnroe crazy, and the tactic was to be consistently boring. There were many tactics that he could have used to drive McEnroe crazy. That just happened to be the one that was useful in that moment, given his skill set. So the reason it's important to understand strategy versus tactics, strategy is the hard work we do before we do the hard work. If you spent all your time prepping for a tennis tournament, learning a bunch of tactics that didn't add up to a strategy that was going to help you win, it would be time wasted. First, we've got to say, what are the rules of this game? What is our opponent or the people in the system good at? And how are we going to show up with a different way of being that is going to negate the thing they're already good at? Years ago, I got hired to give a speech at Walmart, and it was 1999. So that's 26 years ago, Seth. 1999, the biggest retailer in the world.
I still had hair.
Not me. 250 people in the room. And on the wall, as I walked in, was a giant banner that said, "We can't out Amazon Amazon." 25 years ago, they knew that if they played Amazon's game, they were going to lose fast because they would have to lower the price in all of their stores to compete. Instead, they bought themselves 2 decades of runway to build other alternatives. They had a strategy because they understood when a company like Amazon has unlimited access to capital and is willing to lose money every day, can't out Amazon Amazon.
And, you know, McEnroe's comments were he never gave me anything to work with, meaning he didn't give him a lot of pace. He didn't give him anything flat where he could, you know, hit a drop shot or change direction, change an angle, go up the line and make a move a little bit. And, you know, it's kind of like, you know, content without strategy. So Borg's cross court without the bigger meta picture, it's just kind of hitting the ball. That's at least what it feels like. Your book, you know, there were so many remarkable things about it, using one of your ideas being remarkable. But really the idea of no page numbers, and, you know, I think I've read somewhere where you called them, they're not just notes, it's bullet points. There's, I think, 297 of these numbered bullet points, if you will. Is that right?
Well, I call them riffs. And,
riffs.
You know, think about how people learn. When you were growing up, your mom didn't sit you down and say, "Today's vegetable day. We're going to start with artichokes and work our way all the way up to zucchini." That's not what happens. You learn a couple things, and then you work on something else, and you learn a couple other things. And when you're much older, you discover rutabaga. And the same thing is true for how I teach is if I had to force it into an ABC organization, I'd have to confuse people because you need to talk about this and then talk about that and then back to this. So by spreading the riffs through the book in a way that I think people learn, the book achieves its objectives.
The majority of our listeners and viewers are solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, small business owners. Many are in the event world, event producers, event marketers, meeting professionals. And, they love structure, they love learning, they love experiences. These are things that they index very highly on valuing. In today's world of events, which you have spoken to my clients at, and I've been there in person with you, the idea of strategy today in events, particularly with keynoters, it seems like the keynote market is so saturated, and there's just so many platitudes and so many speakers that frankly, from my perspective, all sound alike. It's become highly commoditized. It's like a race to the bottom, if you will. What are you seeing out there from your perspective for meeting professionals or even keynoters that to keep their eye on, and in the context of your book, your new book?
Any industry that's feeling pain feels pain when the industry is changing, when the systems are changing. COVID plus economic changes transformed this entire industry. People don't go to a conference just because there's a conference. They used to. It was a good way to get out of the office and have your boss pay for it. That's clearly not the case anymore. You can more effectively meet your peers on a Zoom call than you can flying to Orlando, walking around for 3 days and hoping you bump into somebody. The keynote market was transformed. It was transformed by TED because the expectation that people have was changed. And if it's not better than what I can watch on YouTube, why am I sitting here in a live event watching it in person? That's a fundamental transformation. So the keynote market isn't saturated. What's saturated is the indifferent, safe, cheap keynote market. There is an endless number of substitutes there. And if you are paying for a safe, reliable, boring keynote, you're making a mistake because you can get that for free. There's another hump in the distribution, however, away from free, and that is for Remarkable. This is the keynote that will get the audience to come just because they're there. This is the keynote that establishes a level of status for what you're offering. And the big transformation is this is the keynote that makes being in the room live worth being there. And I'm doing a lot of my keynotes on Zoom now because I find it's way more effective and I can actually connect with people because I make them interactive like this conversation. But if you are hoping to make it to retirement by running events the way you used to, you're not going to be able to do that. That's over. But there has never, ever been a better time to launch a transformative event, an event that costs more because it's worth more, an event that people talk about 3 or 5 years later. That will feel risky, but it's actually the safest thing you can do.
Yeah, and in a sea of sameness, it's hard. Not everybody, especially if you're a producer or you own the event, you're on the hook. Do you have the margin to kind of stop and, I don't know if the word is pivot or take down a different path, but in the world, in the race to the middle and unremarkable events and unremarkable keynotes, I hear you loud and clear. I was recently at an event, and a CEO was sharing in intimate detail about their number one client that they got rid of. And what was interesting was he recounted the conversation in broad strokes, and this other person who eventually got fired by the CEO kept asking, "Are you there? Are you there?" And the CEO was just like, "I'm listening." And he goes, "Well, what are you hearing?" He goes, "I hear we're in two different places and it's not working anymore." You know, and the guy was shocked. And what I took away from that, Seth, I'll land this plane in a minute, is, there was a status shift. Whereas before, the client had the higher status, was driving things, and the service provider was needy. And I find as an agency, as a speaker broker, I'm gaining my voice in my status, not because I'm booking, these famous people, which I'm really not, or that I have a higher volume, which I am slightly every year, but that I'm beginning to find my footing on choosing who I want. And parts of your book spoke to me or resonated in that idea. You're smarter, the two of Seths here. Help me land that plane. Does that
Well,
make sense what I'm saying?
let's get very granular to
Okay.
highlight the feeling that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'll show up at a gig. I've given more than 1,000 talks, and it'll be in the biggest room they could have. It's just before lunch, and the room is filled with tables for 10. Now, as a speaker, that means 1/3 to 1/2 the people have their back to me, and it means that half the room is filled with wood. There is nothing that happens in a room like that that is transformative or memorable. And I will talk to the organizers in advance. And I say, why are we doing this? Why? You're paying me a lot of money. I don't have to come. There's lots of places I could go. I'm coming here to make a difference. And you just used your power to change the room to make it fail. Why did you do that? And these well-meaning people say, well, we need to because we have to serve lunch right after this and we don't have time. Okay. And we need to because the caterer needs to get in and out really fast, and tables for 10 are most efficient for the caterer. Okay. And we're doing it because that's the way we've always done it. Okay. So now we're clear about who it's for and what's it for. It's not for the people who paid to come to the conference, and it's not designed to create a significant change in their attitude or their learning. What it's designed to do is check a box and go on to the next thing. You did that because you're under pressure. There's systems in place. And that's why the status quo is the status quo, because it's good at sticking around. But if you want to understand why 10% fewer people are going to come next year to Orlando, take a look at what you just did there. What you did was you made the logistics people in charge, and you forgot why you were having the event in the first place.
Yeah.
And I got 40 examples like that. I'm not bringing this up because I hate round tables, though I do. I'm bringing this up because can you feel the feeling now that we're talking about? If you're not prepared to lean into things that might not work in service of better, then why do you think anything's going to get better?
Look, and here's the I don't know if it's a surprising thing. Our audience are creative. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm a leads organization, I'm a sales organization, but I'm a creative person. I'm not painting, oil paintings, but I'm creative. And the suggestion of the example that you're using suggests that there needs to be more creativity because there's a lack of understanding who it really is serving the attendees to transform, make a difference, have an impact that's lasting.
Yeah. I mean, what does creativity mean? Creativity is simply taking responsibility for making something that might not work. And if you are not willing to do something that might not work, then you're not creative.
Yeah. But strategy, it's hard. It's not easy. You have to stop
That's
everything.
right.
Look, we punch above our weight. I say that with pride. It might be a euphemism for we do better for our size than what traditionally would be. It's great. We've earned it and everything. But when I stop the motor metaphorically and I have to think, okay, we're looking at a new venture within our system or a new channel of business that that ideally would generate income. I have to stop and think, and it creates an inner tension for me, which sometimes fuels my creativity, but then sometimes can be a distraction. And I think that having booked you and and read your books and been at your live speeches, you love systems and system thinking. And, I think what you're alluding to on these round table examples is saying, hey, meeting professionals, how many meetings have you spoken at, Seth? 1,000, where the title of the meeting is Engage, Summit, Meetup, Better. It all sounds the same. You could be in San Antonio and Orlando and Dallas, Chicago, somewhere in Arizona. So, what you're saying is get creative, work on an event strategy that's going to be more fertile for people to want to come back and establish word of mouth.
Yeah, create a system. I mean, one of the reasons I got into this is I used to run a summer camp. And the beauty of running a summer camp is you're isolated, you've got willing participants, and you can invent your own language, your own approaches, your own system. And it becomes normal the way things are around here. Like you watch all these high powered people sheepishly getting in line to get on an airplane. Well, why did that happen? Well, that's how we get on airplanes. Well, yeah, but that's a 100-year-old system. It's just the Wright brothers figured it out, and this is how we get on airplanes. So we don't question the system. And then someone like Southwest shows up and adds a back door, and they can load the plane twice as fast. They don't have boarding cards, et cetera, et cetera. Oh,
Bags
we could
fly
do it
free.
yeah, we could do it a different way. So when I think about, and I've run some really cool events, when I think about the freedom and leverage you have, if engaged, powerful people are going to spend 2 or 3 days together away from home, think about how many things you could change. Think about how you could transform the way people engaged with each other. But instead, you're going to do whatever the Marriott tells you to do. You're going to do whatever the caterer tells you to do. You're going to do exactly what you did last year with a little tiny change, and maybe you'll change the granola bars out for energy bars. We don't need more clerks. We got AI to do that now. We need leaders who are going to say, you know what these people want? They want to be connected, and they want to feel alive, and they want to see possibility. And for the people who don't get the joke, sorry you didn't get the joke. But for the people who did, they'll be back next year and they'll bring their colleagues.
I'm going to connect this to your idea about attention, take it a little bit further, right? Because, content, there's so much content, but what's the strategy behind the content? Rhetorical question. So much content. What's the purpose of it? What's your end game? What's the strategy? But your thesis is you have to earn it. You have to earn the attention. It's not a given. It's not, get everybody to a convention center or into a hotel or a nice property, and then they're trapped. You can't steal it, in your words. In the world of noise, in the world of swipe left or stop the scroll, my feeling is we try to provoke dialogue. That's what we try to do with our content. Try to provoke dialogue so that we can get talking, get connected. And then we'll see. It might be an A or a B. It might be, hey, let's keep going, or it won't work out. Maybe we can meet up again. But at least we're getting that to see if it makes sense or not. I'm just going to take this and, this is a quote: strategy isn't a map. It's a compass. I love that. Strategy is a better plan. It's the hard work of choosing what to do today to make tomorrow better. This is the point. This is at the heart of our work and the challenge of our days toward better. I mean, that just like to my DNA level,
Thank you.
I love camp. I love the analogy. I never thought of it that way. I went to camp since I was 6 years old. I was a counselor. I was a land sport. My children now go to summer camp, sleepaway camp. And now that you think about it, it really is, if you could almost bring a camp mindset to some of these events where you can make up whatever you want. And I'm not saying games, but there could be more whimsy, more play, more engagement, more connection, and be smart about it, be strategic about it. I think that is something that's glaringly missing at some of these big events where the investment is huge.
Right. But you will be criticized. And this is why the work is hard. That if you program differently than you did last year, some people will be transformed by it. And some people will whine about the fact that you didn't do what you did last year. And so what we have to keep coming back to is, it's not for you. This is what we're doing. Come on this bus if you want. This bus goes to Topeka. If you're trying to get to Cleveland, that's the other bus. And being clear about why we are showing up to make this change in the first place. I used to go to Comdex. I used to go to CES. CES used to matter so much.
Yeah.
CES doesn't matter at all anymore. but they kept running CES the same way. So is it their fault? Right? Well, yeah, it is their fault because the internet changed everything. When you get to CES, there's nothing new because you saw it online 3 weeks before you got there, right?
Right.
What is the purpose of bringing 100,000 people together in a giant convention center? When we think about these gatherings, Grateful Dead concerts, Burning Man, CES, TED, they've all been transformed by the systems changing around us. And it goes right down to the keynote thing, right? That it used to be the only way to get a keynote speaker was to call your local broker because they were the only person who knew who represented everybody. They had the big, thick book. Now everyone's out there and anyone is qualified to be a keynote speaker. So why exactly did you book the person you booked? Because it was easy and convenient and safe? Or because it's going to lead to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And by the end of the day, people will have changed their minds. Because if you change people's minds, they come back for more. Whereas if all you're doing is giving them something to do in between playing golf, they'll find someone cheaper than you to do it with next year.
I mean, you're speaking right to the heart of the matter for me. I just want to talk to our audience. If you have challenges where you're either scared or you want to start a ruckus and you don't know how to access that courage or that bravery, chime in the comments, subscribe, like us, love us. This is it. Plus, it's an opportunity to talk to two Seths at once. So you get a 2-for-1 right there. It's a new offer we're providing here. Seth, I mean, that speaks to me and what I do. I mean, in all frankness, I'm a broker. And if a meeting planner wants to Google Seth Godin, they can find you and get at you. But where I'm trying to distinguish myself is, I am your Sherpa. I am your squire. I am your guide. I'm at the base camp of ever saying go, no, go, even though you have all the technology and even ChatGPT and the barometer and the altimeter and everything. I've been up 1,000 times. So if you want somebody who can share business mindset about AI for an agricultural group, Google it, go to all the bureau lists. But I'm going to tell you, just as I'm making this up off the top of my head, a friend of yours, Tim Sanders, who grew up in Clovis, New Mexico, riding his grandfather's tractor and was in the 4-H club and knows a thing or two about technology, could certainly talk to agricultural banks about where it all fits, and not just because he was living on a farm, he actually is connected to that world. So the question is, how do I start a ruckus? I mean, I'm not turning this into you consulting, but for business owners, if you're tuned into what that distinction is that you have, how do you get it out there in the noise?
Yeah. So one of the challenges, it's a great question, and I don't feel like I'm consulting. I don't do consulting. I'm happy to give you free advice.
Right. It just crossed my mind. I didn't want to turn this into a therapy session.
No, a lot of people are confronting the same thing as we eliminate scarcity of information and we eliminate scarcity of tasks because of AI. How do we make a living? Well, one method is what I call a knock-knock joke, which is I know a secret and you have to pay me or I won't tell you the secret. And that can work in certain small areas. And, if you go to the greatest knee surgeon in the world, getting a diagnosis from them is probably worth it. In general, it's a tough way to make a living going forward because, as you pointed out, people can Google and Google. Why should they pay you if all you have is a secret? The real opportunity is in connection, is in organizing circles of people. So if I was running a firm that was booking speakers, I would have a list of 50 clients and I would have them meet every 2 weeks. And I would coordinate and amplify and connect that group because all of us are smarter than any of us. And that insight that you would get from 49 other conference planners plus Seth would be priceless. And if you end up double crossing me and not hiring me to book your speakers, then you can't be in the group anymore because I'm contributing and you get to pay it forward. But these guilds, these circles of people, we're seeing them built inside informal institutions, and they're incredibly powerful. But again, it takes guts to do it. I remember how many years ago? 30 years ago, AOL had an event. AOL was the internet before the internet. AOL had an event in which they had their 50 biggest suppliers, I was one of them, come and hear from all their executives about what the future of AOL was going to be like. And one guy, Tom, booked a suite and invited 8 of us together. And the 8 of us sat around his hot tub and we all brought our contracts and we all compared who had the best deals from AOL for this, and this. So we could all go back and renegotiate. So that added so much value to this circle of people that Tom and I have been in touch ever since. The ability to build these informal networks, the keynote's just an excuse to do that. That's the way we need to think about conferences going forward. People like us do things like this. Who's in the room? If I grow with someone, then I stay with someone. So we need to create the conditions for people to grow.
I mean, I'm thinking of the image of getting everybody together, even on a Zoom, and it feels like if we can go back to camp, like a campfire on Zoom or something like that, campfire in cyberspace, so to speak,
Yeah, or it could be something as simple as a newsletter where you each month, all 50 people give you their best idea of the moment, and you summarize all 50 ideas and send it back to the 50 of them. Who doesn't want to get that newsletter? Who doesn't want to be featured in that newsletter? Right?
Yeah.
If you're the center of a circle and you build resilience and strength for that circle, they're not going to walk away.
It's a brilliant idea. Thank you. I love it. I'm already kind of formulating a list of names in my mind. This most recent book, as far as like personal satisfaction or the deviation from a traditional chapters and page numbers and all that, it occurred to me as well. I love aesthetics. I love, a fresh idea. And so I opened it and then I started thumbing through and I was like, oh, okay. Like first thing out of my mind was like, oh, different. Like literally to myself, I might have even said it out loud. And then I was like, I love snippets. I speak in snippets to ChatGPT, and I have a prompt where it organizes it for me. So I love that. That's how I communicate a lot with my team or create some of our content. Unpack that for us? What was the thinking behind it?
Well,
I know you mentioned it's how people learn, but you had an editor. You had people to kind of get on board. I know it's how people learn.
Well, I care a lot about the industry of publishing. My first book was in 1986. When I was a book packager, I did 120 books. Most of the publishers in New York I've published with. Publishing is dying. Watching bookstores struggle. And I like working with people who I like. I switched publishers for this book to Authors Equity. I was their very first book they published. And the woman who runs it, it's only 10 people. She used to be the head of Penguin, where she had thousands of people. And the joy I got in creating this book and helping them with their strategy was priceless. I designed the book, I typeset the book, I wrote the book, I designed the cover because I've done this a lot. And so there was a craft to what I was trying to do, to create the conditions for people to shift. There's no page numbers because half my readers are either on the Kindle or audio, and you can't have page numbers on the Kindle or audio anyway. So numbering the sections makes more sense because now you can say to your team, let's talk about number 142. Because you write a book the same way you run a conference. You write a book so people will share it. A conference with one attendee does not work, and a book that's only read by one person doesn't work. The purpose of the book is to get people to share it. So, as we start to wrap this up, I want to remind you that you probably use yellow tennis balls when you play tennis. And they did not exist when I was born.
That's right.
That this ancient traditional game where people still dress the same way at Wimbledon, the balls changed color. And we know who invented them, actually, and we know why they were invented. And we keep coming back to who's it for and what's it for. If you can't tell me the change you seek to make and who you're trying to change, don't waste your time or your money. We need to begin with that. So I knew exactly who the book was for. I knew the change I was trying to make. It's been a thrilling journey, but mostly I just want the change to keep happening. I want us to not be afraid of better. I want us to lean into what is possible because we have so many advantages right now. The world is crazy and this is as normal as it's ever going to be again. So given that that's true, what are you going to do about it?
I think that's a great ending point. I have like 400 or 500 other ideas and questions, including the 800 no's, which I'm sure was way more than 800 no's. But it is true. It comes down to taking risks and being willing to be uncomfortable to start that ruckus. And, I think that it's worth it. The opportunity cost is there. It's hard to see. It's hard to take that leap of faith in oneself. But, I tell my girls, my 3 daughters, all there is belief. You have to start with yourself. So, and they get a lot of that encouragement at summer camp. So we'll leave it there. Seth, just thank you so much for the book. Thank you for this conversation. It was truly a privilege and an honor to have you on the podcast. And just thank you so much for your generosity of spirit. We appreciate it. And to our listeners, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Seth. Keep making a ruckus.
You got it.